So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Women Empowered Make a Difference webinar. My name is Lucy Shivali. I'm hosting the event today. I'm joined by a fantastic and inspiring mix of speakers from the industry to discuss how we can create a supportive culture for women and how to empower each other to make a difference. Before I start, just for those who missed it at the very beginning, I just need to make you all aware that the webinar is being recorded. So the format of today's event will be as follows. I'm going to give a brief introduction to myself, FairHeat, and what the Women Empowered Make a Difference initiative is. I'm then going to let the speakers introduce themselves and what they do. And then we're going to jump into a panel discussion where we will give you insight into our own experiences and hope to share best practices and resources to help each individual and organisation feel empowered to take action. We will also have time at the end for a Q&A session, so please do send any questions through to the Q&A box, and we would try our best to answer them at the end or answer them as the presentation is going on and discussion is going on, or if we don't have a chance to answer them during this event, we will try and answer them after the event as well. So who am I? I'm Lucy Shivali and I'm a graduate engineer at FairHeat. I graduated uni with a chemical engineering degree in June 2019 and then joined FairHeat shortly after in the September. And here I am nearly 2 years later. FairHeat are an engineering consultancy who specialise in heat networks. We work with both new heat networks, kind of from early design stage through to install and commissioning, as well as operational heat networks. And ultimately, we work with our clients to ensure that their heat networks are performing the way they're meant to perform. So you're probably wondering why we are here talking about empowering women. I'm going to take you through a bit of a journey as how we got to Women Empowered Make a Difference. FairHeat and heat networks kind of fall into a number of different sectors. We fall into the building services sector, heat falls into the energy sector, and my role also involves me going on construction sites. So we fall into the construction sector. And it's kind of often been whilst myself and female colleagues have been working on construction sites in particular, where we found ourselves in less supportive environments, whether this be kind of incidents of harassment or subject to sexist comments, which guys on site just think is banter, or entering site offices, which has pornographic material on the wall, those sorts of things. And prior to me joining FairHeat, my colleagues noticed they were often faced with a lack of female facilities when arriving to site, whilst our male colleagues were always adequately provided for. And still now we often find that female toilets are being used as storage, or the keys to the toilets are with some random site guy who is always really hard to track down, or there's kind of no separate change provisions or lockers for females. So looking to make a change, my colleague Ellen and previous colleague Lena created the Females Facilities Checklist. This checklist is based on health and safety guidance that stated females should have separate toilet facilities or shared. If it's in a lockable, or if it's shared, it should be a lockable room, and provision should be provided for changing areas with lockers and seating if necessary. So we now take this checklist when we visit our new sites, and it has been a really great success in ensuring that we have equal provision when working on site. And it's a really great tool to have to be able to take to the site teams as well. And when reflecting, we kind of realised it had been such a great success as we had policy to back us up. We had the health and safety guidance, and we also were massively supported from our organisation in implementing the checklist, whether this was through senior management being really on board, as well as also our male engineering colleagues, who also get really on board with this and take this to site as well. So both of those things, having kind of the policy and the support, made us feel really empowered to be able to push for equality. So this is how Women Empowered Make a Difference started, and kind of where the name came from. When women are empowered and have the correct support and resources, they feel powerful to influence and push for change to create a supportive industry. So now obviously females facilities is just one tiny aspect of the bigger picture, but we have managed to create a bit of a change. But there's obviously lots of different areas to tackle, and lack of females and diversity in these industries, harassment and bullying as a result of someone's gender, or just a general kind of unsupportive and unattractive environment for women to work in. So with WEMD, as we call it for short, we don't really want this to be a marketing campaign or a one-off conversation. We kind of want this to be a movement, a change in culture, for people to take action and to make real change, to ensure that this industry is inclusive, supportive and attractive for all types of people. And based on the experiences we have had and what we would like to see in the industry, we've defined what we think a supportive culture is. However, it would be really interesting to hear what other people think a supportive industry is for them, and we would love to continue to add to this as well. So it's International Women in Engineering Day tomorrow. The theme of this year's Women in Engineering Day is Engineering Heroes. And kind of on that note, I want to introduce you to the amazing panel of speakers who, although may not be engineers, in my eyes are all kind of heroes in their own profession. So joining me today, I have Lily Frencham. Lily is the head of operations at the ADU. I have Shivali with her, and Shivali is a heat network specialist at Bays. I have Tanya Goff. Tanya is Director of Urban Resilience at SWECO. We have Shelley Lawrence, and Shelley's leading the Cambridgeshire Women into Construction programme in partnership with Hill. We have Rachel Mills. Rachel is Director of SE2 and is also representing the district heating divas here today. We have Simran, he's one of my colleagues. She is a graduate engineer as well. We have Mariota, he's also one of my colleagues, and he is head of policy insurance at FairHeat. And then we also have Annette Ash, and Annette is a principal electrical engineer at the University of Oxford, but she's also here representing WIBSI. So we've got a really great panel of speakers here, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion we're going to have. I'm going to now kind of briefly hand over to each of the speakers for them to be able to introduce themselves and just give a bit of insight into why they're here today. So firstly, we've got Lily. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Delighted to be here, and thanks so much for including me. As Lucy said, I'm head of operations at the ADE, which is your friendly trade association. I'm not an engineer. I have a background in law, communications and international development, and I've always just kind of followed my nose towards interesting projects working with good people. And so I found myself in heat, decarbonising heat, and then in the low carbon energy agenda. And I've been really lucky to always be surrounded in my professional life by really brilliant women who have been role models for me, and also by very supportive allies. So that's been really, really helpful, and I want to do whatever I can to kind of pay it forward.
Great, thanks Lily. Next up we have Shivali.
Morning everyone. Thank you for having me here, Lucy. I'm not sure if we're supposed to put the video on.
Yes, if you could, that would be great.
I'm trying. Morning again. I think just to give a background on this, and as everyone's saying about the qualifications, I am an electronics engineer, and I think now when I reflect back, my journey on this diversity started quite early when I was young. I actually came into civil engineering when I was doing my exams in India, and my father said to me that probably you won't have, as a girl, you won't have a career in civil engineering. So I was then persuaded to take the second best college because I got electronics engineering there. Not that I have any regret of that. I absolutely enjoyed my engineering, but I think it does make a difference. And these things start quite early. So I'm trying the same at my house, to be honest. We've got one girl and a boy, that I don't have those sort of perceptions, but it is difficult. It is difficult. So really an important topic, I would say, and thank you for having me. I'm now a market development manager, was a heat network specialist, yes, till last month, literally, and changed it this week and started off as market development manager in supply chain and new entrants and heat networks department at Bays, and really keen to, I'm quite excited about this session.
Great, thanks Shivali. Up next we have Tanya.
Morning. Yes, I'm Tanya. I'm the Director of Urban Resilience at Sweco, which means that I have the privilege of leading a team of around 20 engineers, multidisciplinary, all united to try and deal with the climate emergency. Sweco is the largest engineering consultancy in Europe, but you may not have heard of it because we're not that well known in the UK. I've got about, more than a decade now of experience delivering renewable and low carbon projects. My background is in community energy, which I think in many ways was a more inclusive way to start working in this sphere. Community energy tends to pull in, community energy in Denmark, which is where I'm from, tends to pull in quite a diverse range of stakeholders and actors and all kinds of crazy personality types as well. So that was a nice start to my career. And within the UK, I mean, I've been working and living in London for 8 years now. As is noted there on my slide, was lucky enough to be involved in the Heat Network Skills Review project, which was led by ACE and IFF Research, and others may know me for my work in techno-economic modeling and district heating, and the fact that I talk a lot in conferences, just about pretty much anything that I can think of. But thank you for having me here.
Great, thanks, Tanya. Up next we have Shivali.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me here today, Lucy. As Lucy said, my name is Shivali Lawrence. I work for Women into Construction. Women into Construction is a not-for-profit organisation working with contractors and women to try and address the gender imbalance in the construction industry. I lead on the project with Hill. So Hill, five-star house builder, came to Women into Construction to see what WIC could do in Cambridgeshire to help support women and grow the talent pool there, which is a huge growth area for Hill. We didn't have any resources in the area, so Hill have actually done a really unique and innovative project with Women into Construction to be able to have the resource to support the women in that area. And I look forward to talking to you more about that later.
Great, thank you. Up next we have Rachel.
Morning, everybody. Morning, Lucy. Thank you for inviting me along. I'm Rachel. I'm a director at SE2, which is a sustainability consultancy concentrating on specialising in stakeholder engagement. I'm also a director at FairHeat. We specialise in supporting social housing providers with their heat network. And I'm the secretary of the Heat Network, which is a peer group for social housing providers just to come together and talk about heat networks and all the problems that causes them. So I sort of collect groups along the way. That's what I do, which means I know quite a lot of people. And from that, we also started the District Heating Divas, which is an informal networking group for women working in the sector across all jobs, from engineering, marketing, lawyers, economists, operational directors, you name it. They're all very welcome to join. So I'd also put a call out, if you're listening to this and you're not a member of the Divas and you are a female, then do please join us.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Up next is Annette.
Hi, my name is Annette Ash. I've been working for 20 years in the building services engineering industry. I currently work for Oxford University, the Estates Department. In my career, I haven't had the benefit of working with large groups of women. I've mostly just worked with men, although I have come across some of the female engineers. I would like to see that change, and I think that we are already seeing a lot more younger female engineers coming into the industry, and anything we can do to sort of provide support networks for them and to help them thrive, I think is what I'm focused on. I've recently become involved with SIBSI as the chair of WIBSI, and we're looking to create a panel where we can focus and develop methods and strategies for supporting and encouraging younger women to join the industry and stay in the industry. WIBSI's current vision is to inspire the next generation and create a support network that will enable more women to join, stay and progress within our industry.
Great, thanks Annette. Up next we have Mariota.
Hi, good morning, everyone. First, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you very much for having me part of this discussion. It's very important, and I'm very passionate about it. A bit about my background: law and health economics. I always wanted to be an engineer, but I wish I was an engineer. But ended up being a lawyer and a health economist. I've held a number of roles in New Zealand. At senior roles and board sort of roles across transport, public health, energy, urban development, construction, television, and insurance. So I've worked with a number of organisations, a number of managers, and different sort of cultures, and so hope I can. Contribute in a meaningful way to the conversation today. I'm pretty excited about it. I was raised by a single mum. I've always been surrounded by powerful women. Raised by a single mum. My partner, she is a senior executive in financial services regulation. So she operates at an international level, and sometimes I carry her handbag when we go to various things. I'm a very proud dad of a 19-year-old. She is carving her own pathway forward, so in the career sort of area. So, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to maybe identifying some commonalities between, my New Zealand experience and some of the things that might be discussed today. Thanks,
Great.
Lucy.
Thanks, Mariota. And Simran, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi Lucy, thanks for having me today. My name's Simran. I'm a recent graduate. I graduated in 2018. I then went on to work in the automotive industry for a bit and came to FairHeat very recently. So I'm very new to this industry. I'm also a STEM ambassador. And so I'm hoping that part of my major aim with that kind of initiative is to encourage more women to join the STEM industry and this industry in particular. So I'm very excited for the conversations we're going to have today.
Great, thanks Simran, and thanks everyone else for introducing yourself. So the Women Empowered Make a Difference initiative has evolved through many different iterations over the last kind of 6 months to a year. And when we've been working on it, we've come up with 3 key themes which we'd like to influence. They are: how do we attract more women into the industry? How can we make a change to industry practice and policy? And also, how can we create a supportive environment? So today's panel discussion will be split into 3 sections based on these 3 key themes. And as we discuss these key themes, I just wanted you as a participant to maybe take a step back and look at it as an individual or an organisation and think, are you making a difference? And if not, how can you maybe start to make a difference? And as I said, the aim of today's discussion is just to give you insight into our experiences, hopefully be able to provide you with some tools and tips and best practices that you can maybe start implementing or thinking about in your organisation or as an individual. And after the event, we will be sharing, sending an email, which will have lots of resources and links as well to help you make a change. We have a large number of questions to get through. So to ensure we get through them all and leave time for the Q&A, I have been put on a bit of a strict time schedule. So apologies, I may have to interrupt people and move the discussion on if it begins to overrun. So yeah, let's jump into the panel discussion. I'm going to stop sharing this presentation. Okay, so yeah, if everyone would like to put their cameras on now, that'd be really great. So the first thing we're going to be focusing on is the topic of how do we change industry practice and influence policy. With the Females Facilities Checklist, when we had policy to back us up, we felt empowered to kind of push for that change. Policy is the thing that can have the biggest impact, however, is probably the hardest thing to change. So I'm going to start with Lily at the ADE. Obviously, the ADE works with decentralised energy policy, but does the ADE have any plans or ambitions to influence or make change to policy in terms of gender equality and diversity?
Yeah, great. Right in the deep end. But happy to start. I was reflecting on this, and I think there's something to share about, I guess, the role of a trade association generally, which is we exist to serve our members, but we also are very clear internally that we're not afraid to lead our members, and that's not by preaching at them, because many of our members you know, are very far along in their conversations about this, but it's by, you know, trying to wrap up everyone and bring them along for the journey. So I've identified 3 main things that I'll just go into in a little bit of detail, and that's leading by example, starting difficult but important conversations, and adding and sharing the evidence base around diversity. So in terms of leading by example, this kind of has 2 prongs at the ADE. One is that we are very, I was going to say lucky, but it's more than luck, it's good planning, that we have a really strong array of great women that work at the ADE. And so we do like to make sure that we showcase their talents and get them out and about talking about their work. And the other element is that in our ADE events, we try and be really purposeful about having diverse panels, so leading by example with that. And that is how I ended up coming up with the Frencham test, slightly self-aggrandizing to have named it after myself. It did start as a joke, but now it's staying. So this is something that we use internally as a way of encouraging us to really kind of reach for the stars in terms of gender diversity in panel representation. And then we've since decided that because it was quite useful for us, it could also be useful for wider industry. So we've made that available as a resource, and I think it will be going out with resources for today, and everyone, you're welcome to use it. If you find it helpful, you can pass it on. It's kind of free and open for all. In terms of difficult conversations, I've been reading a book by Brené Brown about brave leadership, and one of the things she talks about is brave leaders will start important conversations even though they don't have all the answers. And this is something we're really trying to embrace. It's like, just because something is awkward and you don't know exactly what the right answer is, if it's important, you should be launching the conversation anyway. And that's what we try to do, not just in our Heat Networks work stream, but across other work streams as well. But it is really playing an important part, for instance, in the Heat Network Industry Council. So I know that their jobs and skills working group are really focusing like specifically on diversity. And then lastly, adding to and sharing the evidence base is we have a wonderful research team at the ADE, ACE Research. And they've worked with partners on the Heat Network skills report, which I'm sure Tanya will get into. But you know, one of the things that's really important to remember is that diversity isn't just the right thing to do. It creates better outputs. So you know, we've been doing research on that and also sharing research on that to make clear the benefits of gender diverse and otherwise diverse workforce.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Lily. Really interesting, because one of the things we've noticed is there's kind of just a lack of data on these topics in the industry. So it's really great that you're kind of getting involved in research on that and sharing that with people. Shivali, I'm going to come to you next, and just a similar question really. Does BEIS plan to kind of influence or make any changes to practice or policy in terms of gender diversity and inclusivity?
Thanks, Lucy. I'm going to just say to Lily that her Frencham test really sent it to lots of people internally. So it's probably going viral at the minute at BEIS as well. So thank you so much, Lily. No, I think it's really, I'll echo what she said, that and you talked about data as well, that evidence does show that diversity of background, of life experience, and I think it's not only diversity of men and women, it brings different insights, and it creates that challenge. I think it always encourages the change and innovation. Yes, there is not enough data, but there's still few reports. More than happy to share some links as well after this. And in turn, this produces, at least for us internally, and we recognize this, it produces more accountable and trusted public services and better decisions. As you know, our main role at BEIS is to deliver policies and services, and more importantly, effectively and fairly. So civil service in a way represents modern Britain in all of its diversity, I would say. Some of the things actually from more practical purposes and just to share with everyone what we've been doing. The Energy White Paper, which was published in December 2020, it does mention about one of the pillars that we are focusing on a strategic priority of the transport decarb plan. And I know EVs are everybody's mind, and now I've seen lots of friends buying it as well. So I take that example because that's the one which is really happening now. So one of the key focus there is target sector for local areas. And in local areas, it's been highlighted that we are now considering regional diversity and different solutions. Again, for the same reason, it will bring different insights. It'll create the challenge. It'll encourage the change. Then another example is there was a group of 30 cross-sector leaders from financial and professional services. Not sure how many people are aware, but in March, this had been appointed to the Independent Socioeconomic Task Force by the Treasury and BASE. It's run by City of London Corporation. And again, this task force has come from varied subsectors, regions, and backgrounds for the same reason. You get the high-profile task force meetings. They are attended by diverse portfolios, so ensuring that there is diversity in the sector. Few of you might be aware of the public sector equality duty. So we have a gender diversity and also a gender equality group, so DNI group, diversity and inclusion and gender equality group. They have done massive campaigns internally in the sense to increase the awareness and knowledge of public sector equality duty, which I feel is quite important. We do have sessions and we do trainings on them, but it means that as public bodies, we consider all individuals when carrying out their day-to-day work in shaping the policy as equals. So again, it's quite important. A recent one, which has come out for a social value model, that could be quite interesting for the industry, is the procurement policy note. So we are going to be in the central government organizations, when we are using our contracts in our commercial activities, we will give some sort of weightage to the social values, which could be COVID-19 recovery, or they could be work around tackling economic inequality, equal opportunity, well-being, or fighting climate change. So a lot of focus on these things. From a data perspective, you would, and I'll send you the links later, and I apologize, Sala, that I haven't sent it yesterday, but I will send. That under our UK law, we have overseas development assistance, which is ODA, and this is our duty to have regard to gender equality. So we're helping other countries in gender equality, and we've done a lot of research in the last few years. So there's a lot of data which would really help people understand why diversity. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, they're great. That's really interesting. Yeah, they're great. And next, Mariota, we're going to come to you. And I kind of know you've had a diverse career in policy so far. So like you say, what, if any, commonalities have you seen in some of the programs that you've been involved in, and can these industries take kind of note of best practices from other places you've been?
Sure. So I've had a good ponder on, what is it that I could bring to the table for this conversation, and some of the things that around employers. So first, there's one discussion around policy drive and legislative tools, but also the work environment itself. And I think this is really coming back to leadership, accountability right at the top to create the right culture within different organizations. So I've worked in a diverse number of organizations over the years. I've been very lucky to have had great experiences. I've had really poor ones as well. One of them was one really good sort of positive experience was we had our leadership team, and this is within social housing, had created this environment of you trust people from day one. So what does that mean? That means it was always a permissive environment. So as a parent, one of the things you struggle with is carrying out your parental duties, picking up children, often at times that are difficult in the work environment. And so employers were, it was great. I had managers who'd go, yeah, don't even bother, just go and do what you need to do, because they recognize you bring your whole self to work. It's not just I bring my work and then home is different. So as society has changed, I suppose in different roles, dads have played a different role growing into things, and so there's this nice equilibrium, I think, which is happening around fathers being able to do stuff as well. So, I mean, and I've drawn a lot on my own experience. I'm lucky I work at FairHeat, where I've got a manager who enables me to go and do pickup. That means that Diane's not having to worry about pickup. She's in there having her hard conversations with different businesses in the regulatory world, and that I think is great. And I sort of look at that and go, why isn't this replicated in another area? And I think that's a really, really, I mean, I don't know the answer to these things, but it's certainly something that, we all have a role to keep our leadership teams accountable. We all have a role in opening up these conversations. And so coming back to Lily's point before, about, having these hard conversations, there is room to have hard conversations, and there's room to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, if you know what I mean. There's a real, I think there's real empowerment just in these sort of everyday situations. And this, transcends women. It goes to, a whole lot of young people coming into the workforce as well, and saying, challenging, employers, because it's a competitive environment out there, and employers want to attract talent. They want to, be an employer of choice. So, these, are also areas that can help contribute to, building this sector as an attractive sector to be in, for women. And I think that would be fantastic, and this is just this ongoing push towards making sure that it is there, because last year I did some work with Mark Farmer, who is the UK champion for MMC. And so in his report to the UK government called Modernise or Die, it was challenging the status quo around the regulatory framework to support building quality houses at scale and pace, because that's what's needed, right? And so there's this real theme around modernising practices, modernising your attitudes, adopting, even project management tools from other sectors to get things delivered faster. So why don't we sort of extend that to practices around gender, around, employers' obligations? Why don't you modernise your thinking and attitudes, or die? So it's I felt I thought it was quite hard, when the guys would report back about their experiences on the construction site, with material on the walls, inappropriate material on the walls, all of these things that were just hard or difficult, were not a supportive environment for having women on site. So I just thought, hey, this is like 1985. And my partner Diane, she started off in advertising in London in the 80s, and she told me stories about how difficult it was, how challenging it was being a young woman in advertising and with material on the wall. And I thought, shit, it was 85, and I'm hearing this is still practiced today with the construction sector. I think it's quite that is quite sad, and I think we should be challenging these practices, challenging the status quo. Hopefully that's been helpful, Lucy.
Yeah, no, great. It'd be really, really helpful answer. And I think just going back to the point you were saying about employers trusting people and having the flexibility, for example, like having the flexibility to be a parent whilst being at work. And that's all about creating a kind of what we're moving on to next, is how do we attract and retain women in the industry? Having an industry that supports women in that sense is really important. And just probably before we move on to the next sector, I don't know if the panel have anything else they want to add to in terms of policy change from anybody else in the panel. If not, we'll probably kind of move on to the next section, but just wanted to check no one had anything else to say on that.
I think there's a general point, isn't there, about women in the sector, in this sector, in any sector. If you can't see them, you can't be them, is something that somebody said to me the other day. So I think having women in leadership roles helps other women aspire to, you know, to do that. And somebody also said, is now a good time for women to move into engineering? And my question back is, it's always, you know, you don't have to have a special week or anything to do it, and women should, you know, aspire and follow their dreams, and if that's heat networks, then that's totally fabulous, and I'd really encourage that to happen. But I do think as well, you do need it to be purposeful, both at, you know, like the Frencham test. So I help the ADE with events, and so I've been judged against the Frencham test, and it's hard because you invite women speakers and they can't make it, and it gets passed down to a guy, and then suddenly what you tried to start with at the beginning becomes something quite different, and in other sort of diversity ways as well. So it's something you have to have your eyes open to and be purposeful about. And I think that comes across to policy, you know, as business leaders as well. So, you know, our small companies have, you know, we have what we call the family friendly policy, and that covers all of your flexible paternity, maternity, adoption leave, anything, you know, time off for caring duties, because it's caring for elders as well. Quite often that falls to women as well, not just children. So it is, you know, and I think doing all of those things and making it a place that, you know, if you sort of can cherish your staff, then they're more likely to put in the extra 10 yards for you when you need it as well. So it's all about treating each other as human beings, and as I say, yeah, kind of being purposeful about that.
Yeah, great, Rachel. Thank you for that. And I think, yeah, you're totally right. It's just trusting people and cherishing them and making sure that the environment is supportive for them. So I think kind of on that note, we'll probably move on to the next section, which is the theme of how do we attract more women into the industry. And I'm just going to give some stats here. Just 10% of engineering professionals in the UK are female. Only 11% of the construction workforce is female, which drops to only actually 1% of the operatives on site. So we kind of definitely have a long way to come in terms of the gender gap. So on that topic, I think I'm going to come first to you, Tanya. As we've said before, you were involved in the Heat Network skills review. Could you maybe just give us a brief overview as to what that was and what that's shown in the outcomes of that review?
Sure. Yeah. So BASE commissioned a study to review what skills were in the heat network industry across the UK, and how well equipped the industry was to meet the expected or necessary increase in activity to meet our climate targets. So the common stat, of course, is heat networks currently deliver about 2%, 4% of our heat. I think there's a bit of uncertainty about how much of that is coming from heat networks, and we might be all the way up to about 20% by 2050. And who's going to be installing all of those heat networks, and how do we make sure that they deliver? So BASE commissioned the study led by IFF Research and ACE Research, and with SWECO supporting. Key findings were, like, on the good side, to meet current market demand, the heat network industry has the skills necessary. So that was a relief, I think, mostly. not too surprising, but that there was a significant lack of diversity, which is something we knew was the case. The HVAC industry in general is incredibly male dominated, and there are a lot of ties between HVAC and the heat network industry. And I'd have to say it, with the establishment of the district heating divas that Rachel has been spearheading now for a couple of years, it's almost surprising to see how many women are actually involved in the district heating industry, because I was not expecting there to be hundreds of women actively involved in the industry when the first breakfast happened. What was it, 2 years ago, and there were 10 of us there or something like that. That has been quite interesting to see that all those women come forward. But generally, yeah, so there's a lack of diversity. And what does that mean? I mean, Marietta has such a great turn of phrase, and I'm going to use the permissive environment, because I think that really encapsulates some of the things that we need to, why we need to be promoting diversity in particular. We are facing a climate emergency. We're all very much aware of that. And incremental improvements in how we deliver, for example, heat networks, which I would say generally follow quite a conservative design pathway and operational pathway is not going to get us to the kind of carbon reduction potential we need to meet our climate emergency targets, and to ensure that we survive as a species without a significant loss of quality of life. And so if the current heat network industry is dominated by conservative design, well, if you look at the diversity indexes, other industries where you have a significant degree of just the one gender, and it could be either male or female, tend to be more conservative in their thinking. You have groupthink as you have issues with toxic masculinity, and particularly male-dominated societies. You have herd behavior. You don't go to the norm. You tend to stay very conservative, and conservative, that doesn't get us to where we need to go for the climate emergency. So innovative things, transformational thinking is something you get when you have a permissive environment, when people are free to speak their minds, where there's a lively exchange of opinions coming from very different perspectives. And you really only get different perspectives when you're uniting people from different backgrounds. And that can be gender-based, it can be ethnicity-based, it can also just be background-based. So whether you're from your socioeconomic status, if you're from working class or middle class, you can get significant diversity in opinions just from that. So in terms of that, enabling that permissive environment, we need more diversity in the heat network industry, because the way it is now, yeah, we can deliver incremental improvements, we can do the design that is necessary, but we are 100% guaranteed to fail meeting our heat decarbonization targets unless we get more opinions, more innovative thinking, more of a permissive environment where people can share and explore, have the opportunity to fail as well. We need to accept that failure is not a bad thing if learnings from the failure are shared widely across the industry. Yeah, and all of these things are quite critical. Sorry, a bit rambly, but I'm only on my second cup of coffee, and you know how I am with coffee.
No, I think that's a really great summary of it all, and I think it is so important to have that diversity to enable innovation, but also, I think we've discussed this briefly before, having that environment where it is okay to fail and it is okay to make mistakes and it is okay to, as long as we learn from that, but having that supportive environment that allows you to do that. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to what Tanya said there, but yeah, I think it's kind of really important to have that diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I just jump in there as well? I mean, the concept of fast failure is massive in certainly within the technology industry. It's bringing ideas to the front, sharing your ideas and being bold and brave enough to share your ridiculously amazing ideas, right? So and that's great. And often some people tend to hold their ideas back, not willing to share because of the fear of either being seen to share ridiculous ideas or that you'll be sort of shouted down. And I think this is the challenge to us, not just in the women's group, but in those who might find themselves as a young grad starting their career journey. Speak up, be loud, be proud, be brave and bold. But you share your ideas. Fast failure is really good because then you can iterate. And I think that's really great, as you're developing your ideas. I think that helps to build a lot of confidence. One thing, I've learned being a new person to the engineering sort of sector. I'm not an engineer, as I said before, but I've worked with a lot of engineers over the years. And failure is seen as when something fails, it needs to fail safely. It needs to fail, in a planned way, and we don't want to have something that's happened like Grenfell. Now, I know this might be sort of quite out there. I've got no evidence to back this up, but one question is, given the statistics of the number of women who are in the construction sector, given the statistics, of a small amount of women who have been around the decision-making table, would Grenfell have happened? And you look at, Dame Judith Hackett's report around the culture, the shortcuts, I think the term is value engineering, the cost cutting, the corners that have been cut. Would that have happened if more women were involved in the decision making around that? I've got no evidence to back this up, but there's a real. I I think there's a reasonable inference that we can have where you have, not just, one set of same old people making decisions or implementing practices. And this is coming back to Tanya's point. There is a lot of evidence around, there are, I think, some real benefits of having a diverse group of people look at hard, complex issues, and you can get, better quality stuff. I mean, I've been that sort of, I'm a governance policy geek, hand on heart. I like getting quality decisions. That's my role. That's my duty, to be able to deliver up the right evidence so that, good decisions can be made. And I think that's probably part and parcel of, not holding back your ideas, really putting forward your ideas as well, and being okay if they sort of have this sort of fast failure sort of component to it,
Yeah, definitely. No, thanks, Marietta. And I think just going back to you saying with more diversity was involved in the decision making around Grenfell, would it have happened? And obviously we can't say, but just kind of on that point, Lily, back to you. We know that the ADE has a 70% female workforce, which is just incredible. Why do you think that is, and is there a secret to that? How have you managed that? Is probably the next question for you.
Yeah, I wish I could say that there was a secret silver bullet I could share, but it predates me, and it's probably not one thing. I would say that we have an incredibly supportive board who I feel lucky that I've just never questioned whether they were supportive or not, which is a sign of privilege. But I'm sure that they were part of the enabling environment. But there's been some really strong leadership over the last 10 years in particular, and I won't speak to before then because I wasn't in the country, but it's meant that there was always a focus on just getting the people in with the right skills and attitude, and I don't think anyone ever saw anything other than that. So yeah, and as Rachel said before, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I think the presence of really talented, capable women within the company then lends faith to hire more talented, capable women. And you see yourself in interviewees as well. And actually, we sometimes need to be careful not to be too lady focused and to give the guys a break. But it's not purely by luck. We are also, we try to be really considered in our recruitment processes and stuff like that. But I'm afraid I can't take the credit for it.
No, that's okay. I think, Tanya, you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to share a personal story from an organization which was probably essentially the complete opposite of the ADE gender diversity. One of the times when I was applying for work here in London, which with a globally renowned consultancy for their London office, the interview process involved me being interviewed by one lady from HR and then 10 men from across the division. One after another. It was a very startling. It was the first time I've really been interviewed by that many people in one single interview process. It wasn't a CEO job. I mean, it was just a regular job. But in the final discussion, when I was sitting with the person who was going to be my line manager, I was like, I've been interviewed now by 10 people. I've met other people in the team. Where are the other women? I hadn't seen a single woman outside of the very lovely person in HR who had been the first person to interview me. And he said, "Oh, she's leaving. You'd be the replacement." And I was like, "Oh, okay then. Well." I managed to get successfully through the interview process, and they were lovely. I mean, the men were lovely, but I was just like, I'm not going there. I apologize. If you are having such trouble attracting women to your company, that does not bode well for me. So yeah, no, I didn't frame it that way when I rejected it, and I'm still sorry, because the team was amazing and their work was amazing, but that kind of environment just does not seem very appealing on a personal note. So I mean, so the question here, I guess, is who suffered the greatest loss? Was it me for not being able to join this very, very cool team, or was it them for not getting me and me going somewhere else? And I'm not going to answer that, but I mean, I would say I'm very happy with the decision that I've made, and that I've joined an organization with more gender diversity. We're not 70% women, 30% men, but I think I saw in the European rankings we're number 6 or something, or in the top 10 list anyway, of gender diversity in large corporations. So I think we're doing okay, but it was certainly our group CEO is a woman, and I felt very comforted by the fact that there was a top leadership visibility of other women in the organization from the get-go.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And like you say, it's having those role models and those people up there who you can see that really kind of creates that environment. Yes, Shivali, I think you just raise your hand.
I couldn't find there was another way to raise the hand or not. But two things. One, on what Mariota said earlier, and I think Lily alluded to as well, being brave. And I smiled this morning because there was a LinkedIn post which popped up. So a few years back, I was literally laughed at, but we were having drinks, to be honest, in the evening. A proper sales evening sort of a thing, and I said there are heat pumps or there are air conditioning systems in a car, so why not make it fashionable to sell heat pumps? So we chuck in the heat pump with the package of the electric vehicle. You know, when you're buying 15 or 80 grand Tesla, I don't think you're going to care much about the 8 grand heat pump. So just chuck it all together. And this morning I had the pop-up coming up, Elon Musk looking at heat pumps, and I smiled at myself. But I think it's that thing which Mariota said, that you just have to think about it. And I think it's not men and women. If it's a brave idea, it's sometimes it just, and you never know where it goes from where to where to where. I'm not saying that this was my idea that she's stolen, but I'm just trying to say that it's like just, being brave to what you think, what you feel can happen in future, because we see changes almost on a daily basis. And it's quite interesting how things are unfolding. Amazon Web Services in heat networks in Dublin now. So it's quite interesting. One thing which is quite a different spin, I'm not sure if this is the right platform to say this, but Tanya said this, and I'm so proud that she said that she was she was proud that the chief exec was the woman. Sometimes we need to have trust in our own diversity, I feel, in our own gender. So it's a funny story. I can share in personal experience. My friend had a boiler breakdown, and she knows that I'm in the construction industry. So she was telling me later on, she said, it'd be nice if I had the option of asking for a female plumber. That is never given as an option. Imagine calling up SSC and saying, can I have a female plumber at my home? For single moms especially, she's a single mom and she wanted, and I said, oh, that's really nice. But then my husband was listening to it as well, and he asked her, would you have chosen a female plumber then? And the question was, I think I've said it enough, and that made her think, and she didn't actually answer that, which I said to her, women can be trained well, and they can do it. But you know what I'm trying to say? It's a different thing, but it's that trust needs to be there as well. And I would say gender need to trust amongst themselves quite strongly as well, and support each other. It is quite important. It is really important.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Shivali. Yeah, Annette.
I was just going to add to what Tanya was saying. I think I've experienced that as well. And generally, when I have moved organisations, it's specifically been something I've focused on is how diverse the organisation is and how inclusive it is and what policies it has in place. And although for women in the industry, it's good for them to gravitate towards more diverse organisations, I just wonder that there could be a problem there for organisations that probably have maybe very few or no women working in them, and when they want to start their journey and become a more diverse organisation, it could be very difficult for them to get take that first step. So I suppose it would be good for us to have some strategies to help them take that first step, which is probably their policies and maybe their mentoring schemes and all of the added bonuses, the additions that they can do to make the environment an environment that a woman can thrive in, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think this kind of maybe tends itself to the next question, which I'm going to come to Shelley for. I know you work with WIC and in partnership with Hill in bringing more women into the kind of construction sector. So just can you explain a little bit about that? Because obviously they had to take that first step at some point to get women into their industry. So yeah, if you could just explain a bit about that partnership and how that's helped in attracting more women into this space and why it's been so successful and why other organisations should maybe consider such partnerships.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, so Women into Construction, we have been running for over 12 years now, and we are an independent organisation. It started off as an initiative to get more women on the Olympic Park, and the model worked so well, we actually doubled the amount of women on that project, that it was rolled out as a not-for-profit. And we work with various different contractors in various different ways. But Hill identified a real need for support in Cambridgeshire. As I said before, it was a growth area for them, and they reached out to Women into Construction and said, we support this. We want more women in our business through our supply chain. And I think that's a really important point as well. Yes, it's a pre-employment programme to attract more women to Hill, but they use their positive influence on their subcontractors to ensure that diversity goes throughout their supply chain, so that on a site, it's not just the main contractor, it's all positions on their site that has more gender diversity. So they established the need, came to WIC to see how we could support, and our model is very established and works very well, but needs that dedicated resource in that area to build that pool of talent, to work with those women on a one-to-one coaching basis, and that's how we support the women. So we build pools of talent in our different regions, and we work very closely with charities who support women into employment, with local job centres, do a lot of work around aspirations and awareness, working with schools and colleges, and to be able to, for a company to have that dedicated resource to do that in a certain area, it's quite difficult. They're a small company, they're just up to 700 employees, so they don't have that skills department. So partnering with WIC allows them to have that dedicated resource to build that network in Cambridgeshire, which we've successfully done. We've been running the programme for 2 years now. So we have had some fantastic success stories. We've reached in our thousands now when we look at our engagement work of women, and we've actually supported over 120 women with one-to-one advice and guidance in that time, and then over 70 women have then registered to go on for training. So we put the women through their CSCS training, their level 1 health and safety, to get their CSCS card, and then we broker work placements for them. So this is this really vital key element of our programme, because not only does it enable perhaps the subcontractor who might have worked with women before, or whoever it is that we're facilitating the work placement with, to actually open up opportunities to women, it actually allows the women to go and have some experience on a site, because they may see, and it's a fantastically creative, dynamic industry to be a part of. And one key point actually with this is we're missing a talent pool, and that is women who need to are career changers, who haven't been, construction hasn't been promoted to them as a viable or as an interesting career for them. I mean, I went to school in the 90s. Construction was not offered to me as a career choice. It wasn't promoted to me. Before I did this role, I didn't know what placemaking was. I wasn't aware of the variety of different roles available in the industry and what my skills, my transferable skills could go towards. So those women who we are speaking to and and supporting, actually a work placement is great for them, because they get to put their boots on, they get to go on that site, and they get to understand if that environment is right for them as well, and have a go at them, whichever discipline it is. And we feel really strongly, as I know the stats we've already spoken about before, that representation is really low in the construction industry for females, but when we look at site-based roles, it goes under 1%. So we do a lot of work to try and speak to women about the different types of site roles, and then these work placements allows them to go and have some experience, and that's how we've been running the programme. Like I say, great success stories. I'll quickly touch on one very quickly. Ellen, who was long-term unemployed, came to us on the programme. We supported her for her CSCS card. She did a work placement, practical labouring, groundwork sort of placement. Loved it. Hill loved hers. She then went and worked as a labourer on their site. They saw her potential. They invested in through the programme. We put her through a traffic marshalling ticket, and she's now a traffic marshal on that site, and is absolutely loving her role, and was able to progress that way through the programme. So fantastic successes, but also the programme, pre-employment programme, running very well. But what Hill have been able to do with working with women into construction is have me embedded in their company. So I run the programme for them as a dedicated resource, but I also sit on their People Come First diversity group, so that they have that external influence and data points and case studies that can really help drive that agenda with an external input, which has worked. And since I've been on that group, we've actually implemented company-wide D&I training that we have facilitated at Hill, because we feel really important, we feel really strongly that it's great to do all the attraction work, and this pre-employment programme definitely does that through positive action. But as people have touched on before, if that culture isn't there, then we're not going to retain these women, and we feel really strongly about retention and progression as well. And hopefully doing this training at Hill is definitely helping improve and make them have an inclusive culture.
Yeah, they're great. Thank you, Shelley. And that it sounds like Hill and what you're doing with them is a really great example for other people in the industry on how to get involved and get those partnerships and attract women in and support them into those roles through the work placements, and then hopefully onto, I guess, a more permanent role within that. But no, it sounds like really great work you're doing. And I think just going to come on to Simran next, because it kind of links a little bit about attracting women into the industry and going into schools and universities and stuff. I know you're kind of a STEM ambassador. Kind of why are you involved in that, and kind of what's your aim with that?
Yeah, sure. So the STEM Learning UK is an organisation that gives professionals in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, maths, an opportunity to connect with primary and secondary school students. So they organise lots of events where you can go in and give career talks or set up homework clubs. And it's just like a really kind of safe environment for them to speak to someone who's in the STEM industry. So going back to what Shelley's been saying about women in construction, it sounds like such a great initiative to show women that there is that supportive culture for them and attract them into like the construction industry. But I also think it's really important to, if you go to like girls at a school level, before they've got that concrete idea of what they want to do in their head, and show them that this is a career path for them, it shows them that like there's awareness of the STEM industry, and that they definitely have the tools to be able to be empowered to make a difference. I'll use the name of the title. So I think particularly with the global issues that we're facing right now, with climate change, we need everyone to be on board to kind of tackle this issue. And that future generation is going to be the generation that are most affected. So being able to talk to them when they're still deciding what they want to do in the future, and showing them that, you know, in a STEM pathway in the engineering or energy industry, you can definitely like make a difference. And as Lily and Shivali have been saying, when we have diversity and we have women there, we're going to have better outputs, and we need those outputs to really be able to tackle these problems. So I think one of the things that I've been involved in is tomorrow I'm actually going to a girls' school and speaking to Year 10 students about my career path and about what I've been doing. And obviously I'm very new to this industry, so I wouldn't consider myself a role model at all, but just to show them that like this is kind of how you can get into it, and these are the kind of things you can do, and that it's definitely a supportive environment, particularly the heat network industry, if that's something they're interested in, showing them that that is definitely a viable option, and it's really important right now with trying to meet the UK carbon targets that we've got in place. So yeah, so I think this goes hand in hand with attracting women into the industry, but also creating a supportive environment, because I've been given the opportunity to kind of talk to them and debunk some of the stereotypes they might have about it being a male-dominated environment. And yeah, just kind of giving them a chance to talk to them and see what their reservations might be about coming into this kind of industry, and speak about my own personal experiences and how there's definitely space for everyone, particularly women. We need more women in this industry. And yeah, so yeah, just show them, particularly on this panel, we've got such a wide range of like amazing women doing so many different things, showing them that there are women out there that are in, you know, good positions to make a difference in this kind of industry.
Yeah, thanks, Imran. And I do think it is really key that if we're going to tackle this huge problem with our climate, and we need to be innovative, we need to open up this industry to 50% of the population. 50% of us are women. Like, we need to be opening up this industry and make it inclusive and bring in the skills and the diversity as well. So yeah, really super important and really great work you're doing, Simran.
Thank you.
And similarly, Rachel, just on that, I know the Northern District Heating Divas are organising a video to educate and encourage young engineers into the industry. Yeah, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly in its infancy, but the idea is so that the group of the district heating divas that meet in the north, they were thinking about how can we encourage more women into heat networks. I mean, and nobody apart from people inside the heat network industry know what a heat network is. So that's a bit of a global issue we've got to get over. I'm sure Shelley's been on a bit of a learning curve being on this on this webinar. So nobody knows, probably nobody really cares. You know, it's all, you know, who cares really about their boiler? But the idea is again just making people aware that it's an option. You know, like Shelley was saying, that construction is an option, and loads of good stuff is happening around STEM. So my daughter is year 10. She's really into STEM and maths and engineering, all those sorts of things, and it's putting those opportunities in front of them at their feet, isn't it? When they are at an age where they are beginning to think about what they might want to do, and thinking about A levels and their next path. So the film, it's going to be like an advert, I think, really, for all the different roles that you can do in heat networks. Again, not just engineering, but everything. So I'm not an engineer. I think that's the thing I've heard most today, is I'm not an engineer, but so all of the things that can be involved, and why heat networks is interesting and important and can make a difference. So I think they've spoken to 2 or 3 different filmmakers. I think they're putting together a script. There's a little group of women working on that, and they're starting to look for funding for it as well. So it'll be great. And then the idea is to share it with schools and colleges, I think, to just to put it out there. So anybody who wants to help us in any way, do get in touch. That would be great.
Oh, great, thanks, Rachel. And no, this sounds like a really great initiative. And yeah, just before we move on to the next topic, I guess, is there anything else anybody wants to add or thoughts about how we can kind of create a more attractive and supportive industry for women? Mariota?
Just one thought. And this is probably a shout out to my former colleague, Andrea Morton, who heads up as the strategic director at Climate Aura Homes and Communities, which is the equivalent of Homes England. So Climate Aura is responsible for building not only social housing in New Zealand, but also responsible for urban development across New Zealand. So they have a $2 billion construction program. And Andrea has been leading the work around, social or wider benefits from procurement practices. And so I almost think, there's also a role here to play by commissioning organisations and specifying organisations. If they've got a large piece of capital works, they're going out to contract. What's their procurement practices? And is the supply chain, do they, are they inclusive? And so having these elements or requirements being made within the procurement environment could also be an area for increasing the number of women. I mean, it's putting the challenge out there to businesses. If you want to win contracts, display how empowering you are as an organization. I mean, it's up there with ESG, and at the moment, ESG initiatives, it's looking at environment, social, and governance practices, and a lot of it has been focused on sustainability practices across the supply chain. But what other social areas can employers or businesses help communicate to these commissioning organisations? So I mean, there are areas I think that could work in looking at improving practices across the industry. And so specifying organisations, commissioning organisations. I'm not sure what we would call them, but often that's public money. That's local authorities building. That's governments who are funding. We were just on a call yesterday with government organisations talking about the Green Heat Network Fund, and there's certain requirements that applicants need to display and show. There could have been an opportunity within that. Is if you want to be be a successful applicant, you need to display how many women are in your organisation, not just how many women, but what do they do, what's your senior leadership team like, what's your governance practices, and really sort of put that through to the sector, and that could be another way of ensuring that there is change across the sector.
Yeah, I think Shivali kind of briefly touched on that before about their procurement and how they're going to be introducing new criteria on that. Yeah.
Yes, you're right, Lucy, and that is a public procurement notice. So Marriott has quite, in a way, but I can't reveal too much yet because it's coming in the next few weeks, and you will see exactly what you asked for, something similar on those lines, Marriott. It will be.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, if no one else has anything to kind of add on that, we'll kind of move on to the next topic. Like we've talked about policy, and we know that's probably the hardest thing to change, but has the biggest impact. And obviously attracting women into the industry is key to addressing the skills gap and gender gap. But we obviously need to retain women in these industries as well by creating a supportive environment. So yeah, the next topic to focus on is kind of how can we create that supportive environment for people in the industry. And I think one of the areas that I found really supportive for me, being somebody so very kind of new in the industry, and being in quite a small company, is having the district heating divas, because in sort of a male dominated industry, that actually provides me with kind of inspiring female role models, and I can look to that group and see all these fantastic women doing great things. So Rachel, obviously I'm going to come to you now to can you just share, I know you've kind of introduced District Heating Divas, but share briefly what we do and how well you think that has been in supporting women in the industry.
Sure, thanks. So, well, as Tanya sort of mentioned, it all started with a lunch for about 10 women a couple of years ago, and we thought, I mean, my problem is I wanted to, you go to conferences and I find it quite hard to network with people that I don't know, which is sort of not what you're supposed to be doing. So it's going and talking to other people. So I thought if we could find some other women in heat networks, and we'd all know other people at conferences, you'd have someone to go and talk to, and it'd be great. So we had this lunch, and we decided, we'd have like a regular breakfast get together once a month in London. And we thought there might be 30 to 50 women working in heat networks who might want to join us, and maybe a dozen would come for lunch. So we set up a LinkedIn group. So it's now 260 women are members of the LinkedIn group. We've got 7 groups, so it's totally pro bono. Nobody gets paid. Everybody comes to represent themselves. It's not like corporate membership or anything like that. We've got groups in London, the Midlands, the North, Scotland, the Southwest. There's a young professionals group, and a public sector group has recently started. So they're all just women going, I would quite like to meet with these sorts of people. And we go, right, off you go. That's totally super. Georgina from Guru has, she curates our website, so that's also done pro bono, which is amazing. So we've got like a presence. Another spin-off is the Heat Exchanger mentoring program, which is Nikki, again from Guru, with Lily and some other people set that up. And that was Nikki really saying, so she'd worked in Bays where mentoring was a really big thing, and then working for a smaller company, finding a mentor was a lot more difficult. So could we do something within the heat network industry? And that's for men and women. We're now in the second year in the third cohort of mentors and mentees. I've got a mentee and I'm learning as much from her as I hope in some way she's learning something from me. And it's just a really enriching, wonderful thing to do. We've had 2 annual conferences. We're just about to start planning for the 3rd one. And anyone who's been to any of those will tell you it is the most inspiring, uplifting, wonderful. I run a lot of events, and by far it's the best one we do. The first conference, which was face-to-face just before we did lockdown, our guest speakers after lunch was a drag queen, and in no other conference in this industry would anybody let me do that, but it was totally fabulous. There was glitter and tissue paper and all sorts of things, but we also talked about professional development and personal development. We talked about, you know, heat network design and contracts and financing, and we talked about personal development, you know, negotiating for yourself and gendered bias and lots of different things. We heard from, you know, women from other sectors, and it's where you know Lucy, Lena and colleagues first started talking about what is becoming the Women Empowered Making a Difference campaign. So it really has sort of kick-started all of these things, and on a regular basis all of those 7 groups meet usually monthly. We've all been on Zoom for the last year and a half like everybody else, but even that, it was a hugely supportive group. When we were all wobbling and going, I don't know what's going on, I'm a bit scared, I don't know how to do homeschooling, how is everybody else coping, just became this really wonderful, supportive place. It was very flat. It doesn't matter if you're, you know, if you're the envelope stuffer or that you're, you know, director of assets or whatever, you know, everybody is just a woman in heat networks. And of course, you know, I'm sure some way it leads to business because people have made connections and they can pick up the phone to people and it's easier to do that. But I just love it because I've got to know a tremendous group of women, and I'm very proud that you know it has grown into the thing that it has. I sort of, you know, I'm here representing them, but you know there's no leader as such. You know, everybody can make it what they want, and hopefully that it's sort of infectious and people just want to get involved. Very excitingly, I was just talking to Tanya earlier, and we're hoping, fingers crossed, that the London group might be able to meet face to face. Maybe we might have a picnic or something like that, so we can all be outside. But it can be whatever people want it to be. But most of all, it's that sort of collaboration, and I think that reflects a slightly different way, perhaps, that women network compared to men. So at the conference when we were face to face, first of all, the energy level was different. I mean, it was higher pitched voices, so it was like an octave higher than you might have had, you know, sort of, it just felt different. And somebody came up to me and said, nobody has asked for my business card and nobody has asked me what my job title is. And it was just a really different way, and giving people permission, saying, right, your job is to go and meet 3 new people, and giving people permission to go and talk to people, and, you know, asking people to let people into their discussion groups. And I mean, it was just fab. I'm a total fan, as you can tell, real advocate. And I think most of the other women on this call are members as well. And hopefully they feel the same way about it as well. So it has totally grown from small seeds, but it is like a collective power of that everybody's part of it. And if somebody says, hey, well, I want to have a group, you know, I don't know, let's have an Irish group, or, you know, let's do whatever, you know, again, Tanya was saying, have we got you know, no, we haven't, but if there's women in Ireland who want to set something up, let's do that. So it can be whatever people want it to be.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's been like a really great supportive environment for me, as I said, being so kind of early on in this industry. But yeah, the energy and the support and is just great. Tanya, I think you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, no, because I think the Divas are really kind of a best practice picture of how the predominantly women's supporting network. There are some men in it as well, but I suppose the contrast for me is I've talked to colleagues within SWECO, female colleagues at actually all levels, and some of them feel really skeptical about the fact that joining a women's only network, you know, that kind of goes counter. I mean, then we're also, one of them was commenting that well, then you're kind of implicitly also accepting gentlemen's clubs, and I mean, isn't the whole point that we're trying to move away from gender specific environments, and or that they feel that it's a bit iffy somehow to get involved in a women's only network. I mean, what do you do? Do you just sit around and complain about men all day? Actually, that particularly that last comment was really funny, linked to the, what's it called? There's that, Lily will know, it's that movie test, the Bechdel, I think it's called, the Bechdel test, whether a movie has two women in a scene talking about not men. And yeah, I had to say, as part of the Divas, we don't actually talk about men at all, or very, very rarely, just as a side note of my partner did this or my partner did that, maybe might come into a conversation somewhere. But generally speaking, we don't talk about the men in the men at all. We're talking about things that matter to us in terms of our career, in terms of our professional growth. And we learn so much from each other. So yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, but it is interesting to me that women are voluntarily excluding themselves from a networking opportunity, or a community, linking to a community like the Divas, because they feel that somehow it's yeah, well, iffy was the word that was used. I don't know if I have a better word than that.
I think it is interesting as well, and that's why things like the conference and the exchange the mentoring program is for everybody, and everybody's very welcome. Although we do try and have exclusively female lineup in the conference, which means we fail the Frenchman test because you're supposed to not have all one gender lineups. But I think it does give people a space and just helps people connect in different ways. Just one quick thing, Lucy, if I may, because the other thing we sometimes get called out for is being called the Divas, and some people were fairly weren't quite sure about that. You know, I did it slightly tongue-in-cheek when there was only 10 of us, and it's sort of grown into this thing. But we found a definition on the Urban Dictionary, and it says to describe a person who exudes great style and personality with confidence and expresses their own style and not letting others influence who they are or what they want to be. So I think that's what we stand for. You know, it's empowering other women to be successful in their heat network careers.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rachel. And Shelley, did you raise your hand there briefly?
I was just going to say I come across the same sort of rebuttal on women's networks, obviously being women into construction, and I was just going to add that I always say to those who are saying it's unfair that we have this, I refer them to the definition of positive action programs, that they're very legal and very much needed to be able to address imbalance, and that's the word. There's an imbalance, and if you can't put resource and attention and networks and support and empowerment into the side that's actually tipping down, we're not going to get that balance. So I think it's it's a really important point.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as Tanya said, it's a best practice that this group, the District Heat Divas, it's a prime example of what something really great and something really supportive and empowering for women in the heat network sector, and definitely like other industries can look at this and think, yeah, we need something like that as well. Marietta, I think you've got to.
Yeah, one of the things that I've sort of observed as an observer, you know, I've seen the construction sector change and rebalance in New Zealand quite significantly. So, you know, I used to attend conferences, construction conferences, infrastructure conferences, you know, yeah, it was only about 12, 13 years ago. And I think what was interesting was the queue for the gents was huge. And it was ridiculous. So, you know, there were only 2 women at the conference, and the queue for the gents was huge. And, you know, there were some elderly folks there who were, you know, having trouble because, you know, prostate is an issue. But, so, you know, this is the thing. It was, you know, very elderly gents. And so it was just remarkable because that was the hair color as well. You know, it was, you know, just this one demographic was there, and it was very interesting. And you know, a former colleague of mine, Sarah Lang, has pushed a lot, you know, in New Zealand. She's made a huge impact in terms of, you know, women in construction. You know, small networks across each major city, and then in the regional area, you know, huge networks across there. And then she's brought together a national body, you know, and the stark difference between, you know, I think my last Infrastructure New Zealand conference was 2019, and just stepping back and having a look across the tables, the balance there of gender, the balance of, you know, and diversity that was there, it was incredible, you know. And I just think, you know, that's yeah, there's some great opportunities to share ideas, and perhaps Lucy, team, I could put, you know, some contacts together for a New Zealand view for the next call, and I'll vote myself off the panel, and probably have some some people can share their real insights, you know, about what they're doing in New Zealand and some of the success that they've had there.
Yeah, I think it's really important to look at other successes elsewhere, and how can we learn from them as well. I'm going to move on now to Annette, because I know you've recently been appointed chair at WIBSI, and they've kind of reignited. I just wanted to ask you, like, what's WIBSI going to be focusing on in the future? How are they going to kind of attract more women and create this kind of supportive environment in the industry? Oh, do you unmute, Annette?
Sorry about that. As I mentioned before, WIBSI has a vision, and its vision is very much around attracting more young female engineers into the industry, and also creating a support network to help young women, enable young women to enter the industry, stay in the industry, and thrive in the industry as well. So it's looking to put together a panel. I'm hoping as we come out of lockdown, it will become easier to find people who have the time to commit to a group where we can work on strategies to put this together. So at the moment, we've got a LinkedIn group where people can share podcasts and posts, and there's quite a few members on there. And CIBSI are currently they're developing some media for schools that's focused on demonstrating diversity within the industry. So this is very much about providing role models, again, for younger girls, to show them what they could become, to show them a career that they could have in this industry. And we're hoping that will be ready quite soon. We've also CIBSI have also recently carried out an inclusivity survey to help inform and prioritise the activities of the inclusivity panel moving forward. So there's different things they're looking at focusing on at the moment, and it's all about prioritising some of the initiatives that we can put forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that all sounds really great. I guess I look forward to seeing what initiatives come through on that, and yeah, it'd be really interesting getting involved. Simran?
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to add to that, I think that's so great that there's these kinds of activities to kind of support people to stay in the industry, because I think, so in my previous role, I worked in the automotive industry. It was very male dominated, and I think I was one of 2 engineers doing the role that I did out of 40. The rest were all male. And sometimes I think when you get that job at the back of your head, you're like, oh, have I just been employed to meet certain targets? Because there's not necessarily such a supportive environment there, because there just aren't that many women. And I don't think that it comes that naturally to men to think, oh, you know, let me support you kind of thing in that kind of aspect. So I think with WIBSI and the district heating divas, they're such great initiatives, because they show you that there's that support while you're still doing your role with the women around you. And that really kind of keeps you motivated and keeps you, I think, gives you confidence in yourself as well. So I didn't get to attend the district heating divas conference in person. I because I hadn't started yet, I was at the Zoom one, and even then you could see this kind of infectious just enthusiasm coming through your computer screen, which was amazing because yeah, it was just like a really great environment where like-minded people could talk about anything, and it didn't necessarily just have to be about work. And that kind of gives you confidence, I think, in yourself and like what you do when it comes to a professional level as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Simran. And I think just going back to the Divas, Rachel, you kind of briefly mentioned the heat exchanger mentoring scheme, and which, yeah, I've kind of joined on this year's cohort and found it to be really, really great to have that program available. I just want to just touch on like how successful that's been and why you think it is really important. And other people can jump in here as why is it important to have kind of mentoring in these industries?
Well, I think it's been especially useful over the last sort of 18 months because it's mostly happened in lockdown. So I personally have found it's really great to have a regular appointment with somebody who I can just, you know, talk to from my point of view, and it's also helped me realize as a mentor how much I have to give, because at the beginning I was like, I don't really know what I can do here, but you know, it's just giving you know, newer entrants into the industry an opportunity to share their issues and just talk through with them and give them confidence and help them network and just help them think things through, and especially if you work for a small company where that might not be possible. So I think that's, if anything, we need more mentors. So if you are listening to this and you would be interested in a mentor, you don't have to be old. I think anybody who has been a mentee could definitely be a mentor next time round. So, you know, push yourself and do that, because then, you know, if you just think of it as building a relationship with somebody who you can listen to and it's symbiotic. So I definitely get, as I said, as much from both directions. Shivali, I know, has been more closely involved in this latest cohort of heat exchange. Do you want to add anything, Shivali?
I'm really enjoying it, and I know we've mentioned about Nikki before. She is my mentor as well, and I'm mentoring two new people in the industry. So one is male and one is female. Really, really good experience. It's just, you know, the questions they have and the development, and you almost like rewind yourself a few years back, and you go, wish I had someone at that time. So really thankful to you and Nikki and others for actually starting this mentoring program. For me, it's going really, really successfully, and I hope more people join next year and we'll be able to discuss more information and help Annette in her attraction of women to industry.
Yeah.
Definitely. Great, thanks guys. And I think just kind of maybe go back to the women in construction side of things. I know WIC kind of support women in getting in the placements, but do you do much to kind of support women whilst they're actually kind of on site? Because obviously kind of my experience and other people's experience in the company is it's kind of that on-site culture, which is the thing that kind of probably needs to change. And does WIC kind of support women on site, and if so, how do they do that?
Yeah, so our pre-employment programs obviously are led by a project manager in each region, and the work placements, which are part of that program, we don't just like give the women a postcode and hope they do well once they arrive on that site, and they're really supported. So we go and personally meet them on site, and we ensure that they've got the correct PPE that fits them beforehand, and we will hold a meeting on the first day to sit down with the supervisor, and we run through goals, and it's just that opportunity for us to be there on site, have that presence, support the participants one-to-one, because it can be quite a scary environment if they're just walking onto a site for the very first time. But if they know that they're coming to meet me there, that allays their fears somewhat, and we go in together as a unit to sit down with the supervisor, and I check that the female toilets are open. We then sit and work out goals, and it's at that point then I start coming backwards and then letting the supervisor and the participants start talking about goals and what they're going to do over that work placement. And then I return on the last day as well, so that we can look back over those goals, make sure that the participants got everything she needed from that work experience. And it's at that point we then start the ball rolling about talk about opportunities and work on that site or with that company. And that's with our pre-employment programs. But we as an organisation work with the industry a lot more to try and shape cultures and make improvements. And we have memberships. Anybody watching who isn't a WIC member who would like to be, we work with over 70 companies, I think it is now. That's various different stakeholders in the industry, from housing associations, main contractors, subcontractors, and I suppose going back to the attraction part as well, a lot of our members report that using our logo on their job ads does really see an improvement and an uptick in women applying for the jobs, because unfortunately women statistically don't apply for jobs unless they sort of hit every single thing on the job description, whereas men will be like, I'll do it. And so that's something that we're trying to fight against and trying to empower women to say, no, that these transferable skills are so valuable, go for these jobs. And actually our members say that having that visual cue on that job advert, it is really empowering women to apply for those jobs. So yes, we work with the industry through membership. We also we run different pre-employment programs. We also have delivered a really successful progression program, and that was with the CRTB and the Trust for London, where we Women into Construction supported the women, one of the participants in the different organisations. There's 15 organisations that took part. So she received one-to-one coaching. She also received training. Her supervisor received training, and also their senior leadership team received training through WIC as well. So the whole programme saw that each touch point of seniority went through the programme together to try and help support those women through progression. And we also have launched a gender diversity matrix, where we go into companies and work with their supply chain, and then we get them to use our self-assessment tool, and they've got certain markers on gender diversity, and then again we work with them to implement workshops and create an action plan to help them increase their score on those different points in that matrix. So yeah, we're doing a lot of work around attraction, aspirations and awareness, but we also are working with our members to really help shape those cultures as well.
No, great. That all sounds really good. And I think if anyone's listening who is a developer or whatever wants to get involved with WIC, I think it is a great company to get involved with and help increase your diversity and inclusion, I guess. I think that's kind of, does anyone, before we kind of move on to the Q&A, does anyone have anything else they want to add in terms of creating a supportive environment? I think Tanya, you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, sorry, just because one of the latest QA questions is a really, I was typing and it's like, I'm practically typing a novel now, so maybe I could just answer it verbally instead, because it's taking me way too long to write it down. So the question, is it okay, Lucy, sorry if I
yeah, go for it.
Thank you.
Jump in.
So the question from an anonymous attendee is asking this question: as a man, senior female role models are really important, but it's a catch-22. There aren't many women at senior level in the industry and it's hard to get them. On the other side, it takes a long time to build a team and bring through young women to senior management. So my essay here that I'm writing, so I have the privilege of being a director. I lead 4 different teams. A third of the people within those teams are older than me, certainly more technically skilled than me, some by at least 15 years. 2/3 of them have been in the company longer than I have. So why am I their manager, coming from no significant leadership experience? Why was I made manager of those 4 teams? And it's about what kind of skills specifically they were looking for, because so this is an engineering consultancy. You can have great deals of technical skills, you can be great at dealing with customers, but you might hate the admin side of the role. You might hate the interpersonal development parts of the role. So it's about identifying specifically what it is you're looking for in terms of that management position, and the skill set, which is separate from the technical skill sets that you might need in the engineering profession or an economics profession or whatever profession that we're in. and then setting up an environment to nurture them. So I'm really blessed to have a line manager and a supportive management team who the management team, we all support one another, but specifically focusing on the leadership type skills that anybody, and it doesn't matter if you've been 30 years in the industry or if you've been 5 years in the industry, those leadership skills aren't going to be part of the regular career development. This is a completely different set of skill set, which requires a different learning environment. So in terms of promoting women to senior management, it's not about how long they've been in the company. It's not about how long they've been doing the role that they've been doing or how many years of technical excellence that they've demonstrated. It's about those other wider leadership skills and the appetite to take on the responsibility for that position. So it's about identifying who those are, those women in your organization who could lift that role, and then about creating a supportive environment for them to learn more about those specific skills. Like operational, I still struggle with some of the elements about keeping track record that everybody is submitting their timesheets on time, which is one of the more fun parts of being a manager, obviously. But this isn't something that you require 30 years of chartership to do, to be honest. And it's a different skill set. So I would push back on the almost on the question, say that, yeah, there aren't many women at senior level, because I think traditionally speaking, when we are promoting people, you promote them on the basis of how many years of experience they've had and that technical role. But it's specifically within Sweco, we found that was how they were doing it up to 5 or 6 years ago. And they realized that a lot of the team leaders, a lot of the unit leaders, they were not happy. They didn't actually want to be managers. They didn't want to have the responsibility of the one-to-one discussions with their team leads and developing their colleagues. They just wanted to do their jobs and spend their time doing their jobs well. So promoting someone on the basis of seniority or technical skills, that's not the right way to pick good leaders. You have to find the ones who are interested in it and who are willing to take the responsibility and speak out about it and then help nurture them. But sorry. So I'm quite passionate about this because we've really seen a step change also now since they actively, abandoned that process about 6 or 7 years ago and have now gone into where do we find the people who actually want to be leaders and what can we do to set up a nurturing environment to make sure that they do their job well. It's been a real step change within the organization. And generally speaking, you can be a senior, you can still have lots of visibility, lots of responsibility in the organization without having to take on onerous line management or team management if that's not your bag of tricks. So I think it's a mental thing partially. Sorry. Yeah. That's it.
Do you think it will just take time, for this to change? I mean, part of it is, again, lessons from other industries. You've seen, many women in lots of leadership roles across different industries. And so I'll come back to Mark Farmer's report, the title of it, Modernize or Die. Why is construction so far behind in the industry? And is it because the preference around technical roles at leadership, at the leadership level? Is it about, just as you were saying before, Tanya, just taking a narrow view of skill sets and not looking at, wider transferable skills? And these things perhaps are issues that, the industry needs to sort of really take a deep breath and have a look at and sort of kick the tires on and challenge. But, many lessons learned in other industries and how those lessons could be transferred across. Speaking from, my partner I've mentioned before, very senior executive, and she's part of a chief executives type, group across the insurance industry, and finance sector, women's groups, I just, find it really interesting. The construction sector is just consistently behind on a number of areas.
Yeah, I think Tanya's advice is probably really useful in that sense, on trying to get more senior women in those positions. I'm going to move on to some of the Q&A questions because we've got some to get through. This isn't addressed to anyone in particular, but the question is, there are men who are supportive in the industry. How do we get the best use out of them as assets? Yeah, Annette?
Sorry, just finding the mute button. I think that men make great mentors. I've had in my career, because I've mostly worked with men. I think they can make really positive mentors, and that they can provide a perspective that's slightly different as well, that can be really beneficial. So I think if there are men that want to make a difference, mentoring a younger female engineer is an ideal way to do that, to give them that support and the opportunity to understand what skills they need to work on, improve, how they can develop themselves, and to help them thrive in the industry.
Yeah, Rachel? We'll go to Shelley afterwards.
I would just say, you know, men are not the bad guys here. So it's very easy to have this conversation, and I think it's great that Mariotta's sort of been brave enough to join us, and I hope you found it inclusive. But you know, they're not the bad guys. You know, the men aren't sitting somewhere plotting to keep women out. It's, you know, it's societal. You know, this has been happening for 200 years since industrialization, and there's lots of reasons why we've ended up where we are, and it's great that it has changed. You know, even in my working career, and I like to think I'm younger than I probably am, but, you know, things are changing, and it's great, you know, and there's young engineers and Simran and STEM and Lucy and all the great stuff. And there are, you know, I don't think you'd have many conversations with men where they think it's an idea to keep women out. I mean, nobody is actively trying to exclude us. So it's about finding the allies, people like Mariotta, Gareth at, you know, at FairHeat. I know Mike Reynolds at Vattenfall is very supportive. He spoke at the Divas conference in December. We had a whole session about allies and advocates, and how that you can identify the men who are being outspoken about this, and you know, again, are being purposeful in the choices that they make and the way that they lead their businesses, and get them to speak out on this as well, you know, and to be mindful about it, and to talk about it when the opportunities arise, as well as doing the mentoring and stuff. It's about being public about it, and everybody can do that, and collective. You know, if we talk about it, then people go, oh yeah, actually that's a thing that I can change in my business. So that's what I'd say, you know, yeah. is find the allies and work together.
Yeah, I think
I agree. Sorry, Lucy, go ahead.
No, go on, Shivali, you take ahead.
Again, just from personal experience, when I joined Heat Networks last year from the heat pumps industry, it was my manager, so Chris Small from Base itself. He actually said to me, there's a great group of divas, the super industry, and some really, really interesting women. You'll really enjoy it. And he was the one who actually introduced me to this. He embraces this quite well, and I think he really considers men and women equal. As Annette said, sometimes they can be really good mentors. In you know, just literally letting you in, sort of a thing, into the industry or any place. And I would also always say this. I'm always thankful to my dad as well, and he's a male. You know, it's like we forget that they are our almost mentors and idols at you know, day-to-day basis as well. So definitely support this, that yes, males have an equally important role.
Yeah, I'll go to you, Shelley. So you've had your hand up for a while.
Just encompassing what everyone's really saying, but I think it's really positive to empower those men who are male champions to sponsor women and feel empowered to do so, not tiptoe around it. Oh, am I gonna is it gonna look bad that I'm it's all around opening up opportunities and breaking down barriers. And if more male champions who really do sponsor women, it's going to make a huge effect. I mean, we're very lucky at Hill. It's actually Tom Hill, who's on the board of directors, who's really influential, and he uses his influence not just with his own team, but as I said before, with subcontractors, and really pushing that message through and using his influence wisely. So just to answer the question, I'd say use them positively in your initiatives, empower them and give them the tools to be able to sponsor women in their careers. It will make a huge impact.
Thanks, Shelley. And Simran?
Yeah, one more specific example. I think one thing that we've talked about within the female engineers at FairHeat is experiences when we go on site where we might be with a male colleague and they're addressed and we're kind of not, if we're with a contractor on site. I think we're really lucky at FairHeat. We have quite open discussions about that, and a lot of our male colleagues are very supportive. So I think them being aware, number one, is really important. And number two, if they have the chance to kind of actively bring you into the conversation or things like that on site, it's an active form of allyship as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's using like women can't tackle this issue on its own, and we need men to support us. We don't want men to be against us. We need everybody to kind of come together and be allies and push forward this issue. Okay, so next question is, how do the panelists feel about manels, and would you refuse to participate unless a panel was more balanced and diverse? This is addressed to everybody, I guess.
I'm happy to jump in first. I've never turned down a speaking opportunity, at least not to date, and I hope I never have to, because I know how difficult it can be to find enough women to join a panel for one reason or another. And part of it is visibility, and part of it is a lot of women are actually quite shy about going onto a panel. They don't feel comfortable in it. But the other thing to say is, when I moved to London originally, and when I was joining the district heating industry, I was reaching out to conference organizers, particularly where I could see that there were no female speakers, and saying, look, I also can talk about district heating. Consider I can cover this range of topics. Consider inviting me to speak at your event. And now these days I'm actually moving more towards reaching out and saying, I can hook you up with other people, other women who can speak. I probably know some that you don't, so I can help you find a more diverse panel. And I think so. I suppose the short answer is I'm not a fan of panels, but it can be difficult to organize a diverse set of speakers. So actively, we can do more to help conference organizers identify other speakers in the industry, and also put ourselves forward.
Yeah, I would echo that, Tanya. And that it's I haven't turned down any opportunity of speaking as well, but it is difficult. But after the Lily Frenchham's test, so I will be honest, I just had an external stakeholder workshop meeting beginning of June, and once I had seen this, you just remind yourself about that 40% sort of a thing. I did consciously made an effort in that organization, and the people who I know. So I knew lots of guys in local authorities and other places from before. And I did ask them, no offense to you, but I just want to check if there's any female in your team and she'll be able to cover just this bit sort of a thing. And I found them. So I think but it does take, and you have to make an effort. The other person needs to make an effort, and you have to have that relationship. And again, there were a few males who then recommended some women, and the panel was quite diverse and really vocal, really engaged, very, very good. But it is an effort at the minute, and I'm sure slowly but surely, if we do this naturally and organically, it'll change.
I think, as coming from an events background as well, I think if we refuse to speak on manels, they'll just be manels, right? So we can, by just being there and saying yes, we make them more diverse, and then when you have that platform, point out the fact that you are the only woman on this panel. Isn't that interesting? And sort of, not in a an abrasive way or anything, just sort of recognize it, and as Tanya said, say yes, and give other women in the sector the confidence to say yes too. And I mean, it's really hard to go, hello, I'd like to come and speak at your conference. That's not very English, is it? So and it's giving people the courage to do that. And I mean, and equally in the Frencham test, it's all female panels aren't any good either. They should all be diverse. And nor should you have a woman who's just the chair just to make the numbers up, and nor should if you're talking about marketing and comms, quite often there tends to be more women on those panels than men, so it's just being, as I said, it's all about being purposeful, having your eyes open and making decisions about things, and keeping yourself true to it as you go through the planning.
Yeah, great, thanks, Rachel. So the next question we have is, the clock is ticking on climate change. As already mentioned by the panel, diversity is important to decision making. As such, we have a clicking clock on how much time we have to get women into the industry in order to make a positive difference. How do we accelerate the process? And again, this isn't addressed to anyone in particular, so if there's anyone who wants to
go, Shivali. I'd just say positive action programs. So looking at what WIC do, it needs to start with awareness, so doing your schools and college engagement, really getting the word out there, using your role models, female role models in the industry, to talk about their role, all around education and just awareness about the different types of roles, but also opening up those opportunities. I mentioned it before and I feel so strongly about it. There is a huge pool of talented women out there who want to be in these industries but don't know about it, don't know how to get into it, and I'm sure networks like the Divas are doing a lot of work to rectify that. But if pathways are created to support those women with transferable skills, it's brilliant going and doing all of the attraction work and engagement with schools and colleges and getting women at the start of their careers, but there is a pool of talent out there, fantastic women with transferable skills. So I think creating bespoke pathways around training and trainee positions for career changes will make a huge difference.
Thanks, Shelley.
I mean, I just want to echo that as well. I think part of it is there's no silver bullet, but a very clear strategic implementation of programs across the whole full sort of spectrum. From the beginning of someone's career all the way through to attracting senior women from different industries which have those fantastic skill sets that can be transferred across. I think that could really accelerate things. How can we make those sort of board roles, director roles, executive director roles more attractive for women to come through, and create that diversity again, really hitting those sort of decision-making levels.
Yeah, great, thanks, Marietta. And then we've got one final question I think that we'll try and answer is, how do you give junior women the necessary support when you don't have the senior women at senior levels? And again, this is addressed to everyone, but Annette, I think you've got your hand up there.
So I'll again go back to when I first joined the engineering industry. There weren't, in the companies I was working with initially, there weren't senior female engineers who could sort of mentor me or manage me, but I don't think you actually need that. I think as long as you've provided an inclusive environment, if you need to attract women, you need to demonstrate that you've got the policies, the strategies, the support methods, the career focused progression paths for the female engineers you want to bring into your organisation. If you can demonstrate that you've got everything in place to support those young engineers, then I think that they will be more inclined to join your organisation, and then you can support them without having the sort of senior leadership team, female team, and then you can develop them in their career, and that's how you would put in place your senior leadership team with 50-50 women and men, ideally.
Rachel?
I would say as well that there's a lot of tremendous women outside of your organisation, and why not link to them? Mentoring is one way, but it doesn't have to be a formal mentoring program. You could just, one of my mentors, I just approached her and said, I've got this new sort of responsibility. Could I meet for coffee occasionally? And she shared her knowledge and experience with me. So it's about looking outside of your organisation as well for those sorts of role models and support.
Yeah, definitely. And I think stuff like the Divas is just a great example of that. Okay, so I think if we'll wrap it up there. We're nearly at 11 o'clock. And I think all the other questions have been answered kind of through the event. But if there is any other questions, we will answer them. We'll answer them after the event. But yeah, just would like to say a huge thank you to all you panelists. You've provided some great input and great discussions, and it's been a really lovely way to spend this morning, and I'd just like to thank everyone who's joined as a participant today. I hope people have found this useful and have found some tips or tools that they can take away as well. And I personally would just like to say a huge shout out to Tala, who's been working tirelessly behind the background, and without her, this whole without her support and enthusiasm, this whole event wouldn't have happened. So really big thanks to Tala as well. We have recorded this presentation, so it will be on our website and social media. So feel free to forward this on to whoever you think may be useful. And as mentioned, we will be sending out an email filled with useful links and resources, and anything that we've discussed today we'll hopefully have in that email to send out to you. And if anyone would like to get involved in the future on this initiative, like, we don't just want this to be a one-time event and one conversation. We do want to kind of keep the ball rolling with this. So please feel free to get in touch with me, connect with me on LinkedIn, or I'm sure my details will go in the email to follow, but I'm sure everybody else, like Annette, getting involved in WIBC and all those sorts of things, and the Divas, if you're not part of the Divas and you're in the heat network industry, it's a really great place to get involved in as well. So yeah, just one final thank you to everyone. It's been really great, and yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there.
Thanks, Lucy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lucy. Well done. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.